Lesson 35, The King of the Golden River, Part 2. My dear children, in the previous lesson, that is lesson 34, we saw how the two brothers, Schwartz and Hans, were very cruel to the stranger who came. And finally, we saw that the treasure valley was fully ruined because of their bad behavior, and the southwest wind never came back again. Now let's see what happens in this lesson, that is part 2. Southwest Wind was true to his word. He did not return to Treasure Valley after that night. Neither did any other wind. So there was no rain. Nothing grew in Treasure Valley any more. The brothers made no profits. Now in this paragraph here, we see that the southwest wind, which was the reason for all the fertility, for all the rich growth that happened in the Treasure Valley, had never come back to the valley again as it had told. It was true to his words, and because it did not return to the Treasure Valley, there was no other wind which came to the Treasure Valley, and therefore there was no rain, and nothing grew in the Treasure Valley any more. So the brothers could not make any profit because there was nothing grown in this Treasure Valley. The next paragraph. The wicked brothers then began to make money by selling gold. They melted in a furnace the gold articles they had. They mixed a lot of copper in it and sold the mix as pure gold. Again, they made poor Gluck work in a furnace while they spent the money on themselves. Now here again we see that the wicked brothers, who are the wicked brothers? Schwartz and Hans. Yes, they started making money in another way. What did they do? They started selling gold. Now how did they sell this gold? They melted the gold in the furnace. Now what is a furnace? A furnace is an enclosed structure in which a metal can be heated to a very high temperature. So whatever gold they had, gold articles they had, the brothers melted it in the furnace. And after melting, they did something which was very wrong. They mixed copper. Copper is a reddish brown metal. And they did not mix as much as required, but they mixed a lot of copper in the gold and sold it in the market, saying that it was pure gold. Again, who was the one who worked hard in the furnace? It was poor Gluck. And these two brothers, the wicked brothers, Schwartz and Hans, they used all the money on themselves. The next paragraph. Soon all the gold in the house was spent. Only one thing was left, a beautiful golden mug that belonged to Gluck. Gluck's uncle had given it to him when he was a baby. Gluck used to drink both milk and water from it. A strange bearded face was delicately carved on the mug. Gluck was very fond of the mug. He did not want to part with it. But the wicked brothers only laughed at him and threw the mug in the furnace. They asked Gluck to pour the gold when the mug was melted and went out on some wicked enterprise. Now here we see that they were melting gold to earn money. And now all the gold in the house was spent. So what was left is a beautiful mug which belonged to Gluck. Now this mug was gifted by Gluck's uncle when he was a baby. And Gluck used this mug to drink milk as well as water. Now on the mug there was a strange bearded face. That is a face which was drawn on the mug, and the person whose face was drawn had a long beard. And it was delicately carved on the mug. Now Gluck was very fond of it. Anything that you have been using it for a long time, you will like that. Similarly, Gluck also liked the mug that he was using right from his childhood, and he did not want to part with it. But the wicked brothers Wicked brothers means the evil brothers. They did all the things that was bad and therefore they were called as wicked brothers. What did they do? They only laughed at Gluck and they threw the mug into the furnace. And they asked Gluck to pour the old gold which was melted. After the mug was melted, they said, this gold, what you are going to do, you will melt it and see that you do your work properly. Pour it in another vessel and keep it properly till we return. And they went out with some wicked enterprise, means with some wicked work or some business which they had to do. The next paragraph. Sadly, Gluck sat down to watch over the mug being melted. But strangely, after some time, he began to hear a voice singing from the furnace. He lifted the lid of the crucible, and what did he see? The face of his old bearded friend on top of the melted gold. Now here, a very strange thing happens as we read this paragraph. Now Gluck was very sad because he had to part with the mug that he liked. But as it was being melted, there was a strange sound which Gluck heard. He heard a voice singing from the furnace. So what did he do? He went right to the furnace and he lifted the lid of the crucible. And there, as he lifted the lid of the crucible, what did he see? Now, before telling you that, let me tell you the meaning of the word crucible. It's a container in which something is heated to a high temperature. And when Gluck lifted the lid of the crucible, he saw the face of his old bearded friend on top of the melted gold. The next paragraph. Come, Gluck, my boy, said the voice from the crucible. Pour me out. I am too hot. Gluck was too astonished, but he took hold of the crucible and tilted it to pour the gold. Instead of gold, a golden draught came out of the pot. His was the face carved on Gluck's mug. Pray, sir, said Gluck, rather hesitantly, were you my mug? Now here what we read is, now Gluck saw that there was someone singing inside the furnace, and so he goes and he lifts up the lid of the crucible and he sees his friend, the old bearded friend, on top of the melted gold. So the person, that is his old friend, says, come my boy, and he said, pour me out, I'm too hot. So Gluck was very, very astonished. He was surprised. But he took hold of the crucible and he tilted it. He slightly moved in such a way that the gold could be poured out. And instead of gold, what came out? A golden draught came out. You know what is a draught? It is a character in our storybooks. It's a human-like creature. It is short and especially it is known for the skill in mining and doing some metal work. So this draught came out of the pot and his face carved on the Gluck's mug. It was the same one. So here again we see that Gluck was not only happy and surprised, but it was something very different that he was watching. And he said, pray sir, rather hesitantly. He was hesitating. That means he was slow to say or to decide to say something. Were you my mug? So he's asking slowly, were you my mug? The next paragraph. I am the king of what you call the Golden River. The golden dwarf told him. He added that another stronger king had turned him into a mug by magic. Gluck had freed him from that enchantment. Now here we see that the dwarf spoke, saying that I am the king of what you call as the Golden River. And he says that another king who was stronger than him had turned him into a magic mug. Now, Gluck had got this king free from the enchantment, that is from the magic spell of the stronger king. Now let's see what happens. The golden dwarf went on to say that he had seen how kind Gluck was and how wicked and cruel his brothers were. Then he told Gluck a secret. If anyone poured 3 drops of holy water into the river where it started on the mountain top, the river would turn to gold for that person. A person could try this only once, and if anyone put unholy water in the river, he would be burned into a black stone. So saying, the dwarf jumped back into the furnace and disappeared. Now, here, my dear children, we see that the golden dwarf went to say that he was seeing that this Gluck was a kind boy. He was not at all wicked or cruel like his brothers. And he also told Gluck a secret. You all know what is a secret. A secret is something which is kept unknown. Everybody does not know about it. And so this dwarf tells Gluck the secret. What is the secret? He says that if anyone pours 3 drops of holy water into the river, and where should they drop this holy water? Not anywhere, but to the place where it starts, that is on the mountain top. And then the river would turn into gold for that person. And he also said that a person can do this only once. And if anyone pours unholy water in the river, he would be turned into a black stone. And after he said this, the dwarf jumped back into the furnace and he disappeared. He became invisible. The next paragraph. When Gluck told this to his brothers, they did not believe him at first and beat him. But Gluck stuck to his story. So at last they believed him and began to fight over who should have the first chance to go to the Golden River. They fought so much that the police came to see what had happened. Hans ran away when the police came, but Schwartz was caught and put in prison. Now here Gluck was an innocent boy, a very good-natured boy, and he did not know that he had to keep the secret to himself. So what did he do? He told his brothers, but they would not believe him. They would not trust what Gluck was saying. And at first they started beating Gluck for saying this. But Gluck kept on saying the same thing again and again. So at last they believed that what Gluck was saying is probably true. And after that, both the brothers, that is Schwartz and Hans, they started fighting. Why were they fighting? They were fighting because they were deciding through a fight who should be the first one to get a chance to go to the Golden River. Now, they fought so much that the police came to see what was happening. Now, Hans ran away when the police came, but Schwartz was caught and he was put in prison. Now we go to the next paragraph. Hans was happy that Schwartz was in prison. The very next morning he went to the church, stole some holy water and set off for the mountain. Now here what happens? Hans was happy that Schwartz was in prison. Prison means jail. And the very next morning he went to the church. Who went to the church? Hans went to the church. He stole some holy water. What did he do? He stole. And he set off for the mountain. He went to the mountain. The next paragraph. It was not easy to climb the mountain. He was tired and thirsty. Soon Hans thought he would drink some of the holy water himself. Just as Hans raised the flask of water to his lip, he saw a little puppy on a rock. It looked as if it was dying of thirst. Hans only pushed the animal away with his foot, drank some water himself and passed on. My dear children, now here we see that as Hans was climbing on the mountain, he was tired and he was thirsty. And soon Hans thought, I have some holy water with me, let me drink that water. And just as Hans was about to drink this water, His hand just went up, raised up towards his lips, and he saw a little puppy on the rock. You know what is a puppy? A puppy is a baby dog, a young one of a dog, and it looked as if it was dying of thirst. That means it was very, very thirsty. But what did Hans do? Instead of giving water to this little puppy, he just pushed the animal away with his foot. He himself drank water and passed on. The last paragraph, the climb now became more difficult. Hans felt thirsty again. He was going to drink some more of the water. Now here we see that Hans is climbing the mountain, which was not so easy. He had to climb a very big mountain, and as he was climbing, it was becoming difficult, and Hans was feeling thirsty again, so he was about to go and drink water. Now let's see what happens in the next paragraph. When he saw a little child on a rock ahead of him, the child lying lifeless, its lips parched and burning. Ignoring the child, Hans drank some more water himself, and passed on. Now what is happening? As he was moving, he saw a little child on the rock ahead of him. The child was lying lifeless, and the lips of the child was parched. That means there was literally no life in the child, and the lips had become dry and it was burning, and it was time for the child to get some water to drink. But what did Hans do? He ignored the child. He did not even take notice of this child, and he drank the water for himself and passed on. The next paragraph. The climb had now become very, very difficult. Somehow Hans reached the top of the mountain from where the golden river sprang. A faint cry fell on his ears. Then he saw a weak old man stretched on a rock. "Water," the man said. "Water, I am dying." Now here in this paragraph, there is not yet another person who needs water. Who was it? He was an old person. And as he reached the top, that is, Hans reached the top of the mountain, from where the golden river sprang, he could hear a faint voice. A faint cry means a soft voice which was saying that I am dying, I need water. Now let's see what happens in the next paragraph. "I have no water for you," replied Hans. He jumped over the old man's body and ran to the river. The sun was about to set. The river shone golden in the light of the setting sun. Hans threw the flask of holy water into the river. But alas, the river did not turn to gold. Instead, there was only a black stone where Hans stood. Now here what happens? What is Hans saying to the old man who was dying? He said, "I have no water." And what did he do? He just jumped over the old man's body and ran to the river. Now he was very happy that he has reached the mountain top and he saw the river. Now the sun was about to set and the golden river was shining in the light of the setting sun. Now Hans threw the flask of holy water into the river. He was supposed to put 3 drops of holy water in the river, but he just threw the flask into the water. And what happened? Did the river turn into gold for Hans? No. Instead, where Hans was standing, he turned into a black stone. The next paragraph. When Schwartz returned from prison, he took some of Gluck's money and brought some holy water from a bad priest and set out for the Golden River. While climbing the mountain, Schwartz too saw the fair child dying of thirst and passed on without giving him water. Now here, the story of Hans is already over, and now Schwartz comes out of the prison. He returns home and he takes some money from Gluck. He brings holy water from a bad priest and he sets out for the Golden River. Now while climbing the mountain, Schwartz also comes across a fair child. This child was dying of thirst, and what did Schwartz do? Did he give water to this person? No, he just passed on without giving water. The next paragraph. As he had climbed a little higher, he saw his own brother Hans stretched on a rock asking for water. But the wicked Schwartz only laughed aloud and went on without giving him any water. Now, alas, when he cast the flask into the stream, he too was turned to stone. So now he saw his brother lying there, and he was asking him for water. But what did he do? Did he give him water? No, he just laughed and he went ahead. And what happened when Schwartz threw the flask into the stream? He too was turned to stone. The next paragraph. Gluck waited and waited for his brothers, but they did not return. At last, he decided to visit the Golden River himself. He went to a good priest who willingly gave him some holy water. Gluck was young and small, and he too found the climb very difficult. Now, what did Gluck do? Gluck went to the priest. Why did he go to the priest? Because he was waiting and waiting for his brothers, but his brothers did not return. And so he decided to visit the Golden River. Now, to go to the Golden River, he wanted some holy water. So he went to a priest, and the priest willingly gave him the holy water. Now, Gluck was a small boy, he was young, and he also found it very difficult to climb the mountain. The next paragraph. After he had climbed for an hour or so, he became very thirsty. He was about to drink some water when, like his brother, he saw an old man. Now, we know that this climb is very difficult and Gluck was small and young. So, similarly, after an hour, he climbed and he was becoming tired like his brothers. And he was also thirsty. Now, when he was thirsty, he was about to drink some water. But, like his brothers, he also saw an old man. Let's see what happens in the next paragraph. The old man walked towards Gluck, leaning on a staff, and asked for some water. Gluck saw that the old man was pale, tired, and thirsty. So he gave him the bottle of water. The old man drank up nearly 2/3 of the water. Then he returned the bottle and wished Gluck well. Now here in this paragraph, we see unlike the other two brothers, that is Schwartz and Hans, Gluck did not just ignore the old man, but he waited and he saw the old man was pale. He was in need of water. He was tired. He was not so strong because he was leaning on a staff. And so he gave the bottle of water to this old man who drank 2/3 of the water. And then he returned the bottle and he also wished Gluck good luck. He said, everything should go well with you. Now, in the next paragraph. Gluck did not have any water himself, but as he went on, his path became easier. After climbing for a long time, when he became thirsty, he saw the small child. Gluck was sorry for him and gave him some water. The child began to smile, got up and ran down the hill. Now here we see Gluck did not drink any water, but instead he was helping the old man. Now, because of that, what happened as he was climbing? He felt that his climb was becoming easier, his path was becoming easier. And after climbing a long time, he became thirsty again. And when he was thirsty, he was about to drink water, he saw a small child, and Gluck felt sorry for the small child and gave the child also water to drink. The child began to smile and got up and it ran down the hills. You can see how the things were different with Gluck. And if you compare with his brothers Schwartz and Hans, you see that Gluck's nature was very different. He was a kind person. Let's see what happens ahead. Now only a few drops of water were left in the bottle. When Gluck came close to the mountain top, he was very thirsty himself. Just then he saw the poor little pup that was dying of thirst. I must help it now, thought Gluck, otherwise it may be too late. So he poured the remaining drops into the little dog's mouth. Now he was helping one person after the other and only few drops of water was left in the bottle. Now when he came up to the mountain top, he saw that he himself was thirsty, but there was a poor little puppy who was dying of thirst. And he felt to himself that I must help this poor puppy. Otherwise, it will be too late. It can die of thirst. So he poured the remaining drops into the little dog's mouth. The next paragraph, the dog sprang up and in his place stood the king of the golden river. He was very pleased with Gluck. The king put in Gluck's bottle some few drops from the petals of a lily. Then he took Gluck to cast it into the leaping river. Now, as he gave water to the puppy, what happened? A strange thing happened. The dog sprang up, and in the place of the dog, who stood there? The king of the golden river. And he was pleased with Gluck. He was very happy with Gluck because Gluck had concern for everybody. He wanted to help everyone, those who are in need. So the king put in Gluck's bottle few drops of water. From where did he take this water? From the petals of a lily. A lily is a flower. Then he told Gluck, come on, I'll take you. And he went leaping to the river. Okay. And what happens next? Let us see in the last paragraph. Gluck did so, but the river did not turn to gold. However, it changed its course and began to flow through the treasure valley, making it rich and fertile once again. Gluck lived in the valley, helped the poor and the needy. His barns were always full of corn, and he never lacked for money. Now, we saw that Gluck came across so many people who were in need of help, who were in need of water. Now, when Gluck was told to cast the water into the river, what happened? It turned into gold. Did it do so? Now, let's see that the river did not turn into gold. Then what happened? But it changed its course. The river used to never flow into the treasure valley. That is what we saw in the first part. But now it started flowing through the treasure valley, making the valley rich and fertile once again. And Gluck lived in this valley. He was helping the poor and the needy people. His barns means they are used to store grain. Okay. Now these barns, that is huge vessels which are used to keep the grains, were always full of corn, and he never lacked for money. That means he had money all the time. So this is what happens when you are kind and loving towards the others, helpful to the other person. You will be blessed naturally by God. So this is an example of a good person, a good individual. So always remember to be kind and helpful to all those who are in need of your help. Thank you.